What is happening, everyone, and welcome back to PS5 Nexus. The news cycle is absolutely relentless, and if you blink, you might miss something huge. But don't worry, we've got your back, bringing you the absolute latest and greatest. Today, we're diving headfirst into a world of mystery, survival, and intense action that's just dropped. Get ready, because the updates are hot, the details are deep, and you absolutely do not want to be left in the dark. We've got a brand new adventure that's stripping away the hand-holding and demanding your full attention. This isn't your typical guided experience. It's a pure, instinct-driven journey where every discovery is earned. We're going to take a deep dive into its intricate design, exploring how it masterfully crafts its world and narrative without relying on modern conveniences. Get ready to learn why this title is already turning heads and what makes its approach so unique. And finally, we'll be breaking down the core elements that make it a must-play for fans of immersive storytelling and challenging gameplay. Stick around, because this is the news you need to know. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an update. A new world of mystery, fear, and survival, Hell Is Us arrives on Xbox, PS5, and PC. A dark and mysterious journey that we've been following for years has finally reached its destination. Hell Is Us, the highly anticipated third-person action-adventure from developer Rogue Factor, is available to play right now on Xbox Series XS, PlayStation 5, and PC for those who purchase the deluxe edition. This is a game that strips away the hand-holding of modern titles to deliver a pure, instinct-driven adventure, and it's one we've already had the pleasure of reviewing and awarding a huge score. The deluxe edition, priced at £65.99, grants you 72 hours of early access, with the standard edition, set at £49.99, scheduled to launch in a few days on September 4th. In Hell Is Us, players step into the shoes of Raimi, a protagonist on a quest to uncover his origins in a country ravaged by civil war. However, the conflict is not the sole threat. The region is also grappling with a mysterious calamity that has unleashed supernatural creatures resembling ancient monuments. These beings are impervious to conventional weaponry, compelling players to unravel the enigma behind their sudden appearance. What elevates Hell Is Us is its distinctive, player-plattering design philosophy. The game forgoes maps, compasses, and quest markers, instead fostering an environment that encourages reflection and keen observation. Players are prompted to rely on their instincts as they explore, ensuring that their discoveries are uniquely personal. To survive these perilous encounters, players must master an intense melee combat system, wielding a variety of weapons specifically designed to combat these supernatural entities, including swords, spears, and axes. Effective use of the companion drone, KAPI, is also crucial for staying alive. The game's development journey has been a long one, with initial reports surfacing in 2022 about its status as a new Unreal Engine 5 title, followed by the confirmation of its release date earlier this year. Our hands-on experience led to a glowing review, awarding Hell Is Us a 4.5, with praise for its superb environment crafting and world design, which is both satisfying to explore and intriguing to solve. The game's dark portrayal of war, touching on themes of displaced populations, mass death, religious persecution, and the moral detachment of invading forces, contributes to a compelling narrative. Furthermore, Hell Is Us has been highlighted as one of our most anticipated new Xbox and Game Pass games for September 2025. For those eager to jump into this acclaimed adventure immediately, the deluxe edition is available for £65.99, offering the aforementioned 72-hour early access. It's important to note that at launch, Hell Is Us is not available via Game Pass, nor is it an Xbox Play Anywhere title, though future availability through Game Pass remains a possibility. A dark secret awaits discovery, with your instincts serving as your sole guide. For aficionados of challenging, atmospheric action-adventures that reward curiosity and skill, Hell Is Us is ready for your investigation on the Xbox Store. The Standard Edition is set to release on September 4th, 2025. Hell Is Us is a third-person action-adventure game that combines intense melee combat with the thrill of exploration. Players will explore a semi-open world to find answers and face mysterious creatures throughout their journey. Hell Is Us Review PS5, The Devil's in the Details. Version reviewed, PS5 Pro/European. Hell Is Us may be one of the most unique games of 2025. Part Souls-like, part adventure game, part detective simulator, this gargantuan puzzler is dense, immaculately detailed, and devilishly dark. You won't play anything else like it this generation. You play as Ramai, a sociopath that has snuck his way into the war-torn country of Hadia, except this isn't his first time here. Ramai was born in Hadia and smuggled out as a child, but he's made his return in search of his parents with very little information to go on. Simply knowing that he came from a village called Jova and that his father was the blacksmith there, Ramai starts digging around and asking questions. This is when Hell Is Us begins to unfurl its very large yarn, and it needs you to start taking notes, literally. Hell Is Us does not feature a traditional map or marker system. Instead, almost everything you need to navigate its world is in the environmental details. Small specifics in discarded notes, descriptions from surviving characters, and visual design, all of it is diegetic and brilliantly immersive. A datapad will keep note of the big main quest descriptors to point you in the right direction, but the game's good deeds, its version of side quests, are entirely down to your memory and attention to detail. You can mark specific pieces of evidence in your datapad, but we opted to scribble down our findings in an actual notepad. By the time we were done with the game, we had pages filled with ramblings of ancient royal feuds and symbol scribblings. That may make you think that Hell Is Us is a hardcore game, and in some respects it maybe is. However, Rogue Factor has masterfully designed its world so that across over 30 hours with the game, we never once felt the absence of a traditional map or quest system. If a character describes a landmark that you must go to, they'll give you all the details you need to figure it out. In addition, a compass and audio and visual cues are there to help, making discovery and exploration feel very natural. We never once got lost. And while a notepad really did help us, we don't think it's mandatory. We're huge fans of this approach, but it could have been a complete bust if the world itself was well designed but narratively dull. However, Hadia may go down as one of the most interesting video game worlds in recent memory. Comprised of a dozen or so open levels, varying from expansive fields to claustrophobic libraries, Hadia is a country steeped in religious feuds and ravaged by a bloody civil war. It's an oppressively dark setting at times, with some streets littered with corpses of children and horrendous visions of genocide around every corner. And there are ghoulish creatures too, just to make matters worse. So much of the world's narrative centers around a religious divide between Palamists and Sabinians. It appears fairly surface level to start. The Palamists hate the Sabinians, and the Sabinians hate the Palamists, and we don't really know why. You'll meet a variety of characters from both sides, gaining more context along the way. Quite often, these people will have vital information to help you on your quest, but you can also help them by finding items, whether those be keys, medication, or even just clearing the way for them. Sometimes an item for a person in one level can be found in another, and it's then that you should be making mental or physical notes so as to complete your good deeds. These often have small gameplay rewards, but more often than not it's an opportunity to learn a little bit more about Hadia and its ongoing conflict. However, Hell Is Us and its central narrative aren't so interested in the details of its current war so much as it is the history that got them there in the first place. Quite quickly, you are exploring deep cave systems and reading through ancient scripts detailing inquisitions, massacres, and royal betrayals. The way the game steadily broadens and delves deeper into its conspiracies is spectacularly entertaining. Through its notes, speaking with NPCs, and studying the environment, the game begins to form an ancient narrative that, despite being literally old news, is endlessly enthralling. The game nails the aesthetic of abandoned medieval churches, caves, and towers, so from a visual point of view, it's incredibly cool. However, by paying attention to its story, which is a byproduct of its hands-off design, uncovering these locations or solving ancient mysteries feels incredible. It's like the best sort of moments from the Indiana Jones movies or Uncharted games, where you're uncovering things that have not been seen for hundreds of years, whilst slotting in another puzzle piece in the jigsaw that is Hadia. Narratively, then, Hell is Us is an absolute doozy, but in a weird sort of way. Everything interesting about it has already happened. This isn't really the kind of game with expansive cutscenes or gripping character arcs, and Henry, as a sociopathic protagonist, is a bit dull. But there's something enchanting about piecing together another part of Hadia's history by discovering an old letter or a knight's corpse. A moment somewhat similar to Silent Hill 2's never-ending staircase had us sitting on the edge of our seat with anticipation. It's not all letter reading and Hadian sightseeing, of course. Hell is Us is split by an affinity for puzzles and combat. Puzzles are almost entirely about opening new doors to explore even further. You'll be piecing together parts of historical knowledge to make up door codes, matching up artifacts to certain positions, and finding vital keys to open new pathways. It's almost like a Resident Evil game with its approach to level design, with tight mazes that you'll gradually open up. There are a few puzzles in here that had us racking our brain. Thankfully, we had the all-notepad to fall back on, but nothing ever feels impenetrable. Something we reckon people will struggle more with, however, is combat. Made up of melee weapons, you'll take on the Pale Nightmare's wandering Hadia with swords, polearms, axes, and greatswords, each of which can be leveled up, upgraded, and applied with a sort of elemental damage type. Skills can be applied to these weapons, and the same can be said for your little drone Cappy. Enemy variety isn't all that, but the game does throw tougher and tougher challenges your way as you delve deeper into the game. Most creatures will eventually host these sorts of colorful spirits called the Haze, which need to be killed first before damage can be done to the main target. However, if you aren't quick enough, the Haze will respawn. We played on the hard difficulty, so combat can be brutal at times, especially when multiple enemies are attacking at once. However, we personally enjoyed the challenge. There is a nice mechanic that allows you to gain back health from damage done to enemies if you time a tap of R1 right. It means you can completely turn around fights if you're tactical and play things slow. However, thankfully the game is fairly forgiving when it comes to death. If you die in a level, any enemy you killed will remain dead, and there's no penalty for death. The only instance where enemies will respawn is if you actually leave one level to another. However, once you figure out how to close the mysterious time loops, you can then freely explore these cleared levels. There is an option of performance and quality mode on both PS5 and PS5 Pro. The base PS5 was largely smooth sailing on performance, with some frame rate hiccups when transitioning between major areas. On the PS5 Pro, the game ran near flawlessly, with the tiniest bit of pop-in. However, it didn't spoil an otherwise incredibly sharp-looking game that effectively utilizes PSSR. We also noted some subtle but nice DualSense haptic implementations. With an incredibly dense lore and labyrinthine level design, Hell is Us is a captivating experience. The game takes it solid, but tough, combat and chin-scratching puzzles, and elevates them with a century-spanning mystery that goes deeper and deeper. Its hands-off approach means there is a huge emphasis on the world, and thankfully Rogue Factor does not disappoint. It's not going to be for everyone, but for those that love a good lore-filled mystery, this is a PS5 must-play. Excellent 9/10. Review copy provided by Knack and How. We review product scoring policy. Hell is Us review PS5. Hell is a place on Earth. Rogue Factor wants Hell is Us to be a statement, an experiment. Imagine if you could go back in time to an era before open worlds and quest markers and guiding tiny attention span gamers through their manufactured experiences. Instead, what if we did away with all that and you did it yourself, and we didn't tell you where to go? Imagine it. Wilderness, unknown terrain for hundreds of miles, no HUD, no icons, no directions, just you, your instincts, and your senses. And a Pip-Boy, for recording everything. It's some gamer's dream, it's other gamers' nightmare. This is what Rogue Factor has been selling us with Hell is Us, an organic gaming experience without the modern-day hand-holding. But can you make a game that never tells you what to do, or is it actually just hidden? Is it really as open as they want you to believe, or is it more linear than they make out? Does Rogue Factor's intellectual experiment work, this player-plattering, or is it just frustrating? Hell is Us does tell you where to go. It's just that, you've got to read the items and logs and listen to NPCs. Due to the entire premise of Hell is Us, that each player has to discover the story for themselves. With no markers, no map, no quest, and little in the way of direction, we are being asked implicitly to avoid spoilers. Almost anything I talk about beyond the first two areas is going to involve a spoiler. So gruff-voiced, curly blonde-haired Remy wakes, bound in a torture chair, drugged with truth serum. He's being interrogated by a strange, fat man with an incredible case of the mumps. As the truth serum takes hold, he begins to tell his story of how he infiltrated this war-torn state of Hadia, cut off from the outside, as part of a peacekeeping team. However, he was actually on the trail of his family. Over the opening parts of the game, you track down your father's whereabouts to a small town, uncover clues, and follow in his footsteps. But locating him is only the beginning. Your father was heavily involved in a mysterious cult-like order, neck-deep in the mysteries of Hadia. The Civil War seems almost a surface-level window dressing, obscuring the issues beneath. Strange white creatures have appeared across the state, dangerous time loops scatter the landscape, and everywhere is mystery buried in the ground itself. Are these deeper mysteries actually what the Civil War is about? I'm being deliberately vague, because to be specific is kind of like giving you clues for finding your way in the game. Hell is Us. Narrative never feels like it's trying to throw a plot at you or Hollywood action. Just a world to investigate, filled with revelations. And if you listen to NPCs and go exploring, it rewards your curiosity tenfold. The narrative seems to occupy that sweet spot I've been seeking for some years, the Lagrange point between FromSoft's enigmatic lore-based world-building and the plot-driven narratives behind things like Uncharted or a Final Fantasy. Hell is Us presents a compelling narrative mystery, far more so than something like Dark Souls, because what's hidden in the items and NPCs and audio logs actually drives the plot. I hope it's a game-changing narrative style, because I love a good plot, but I also love a good Souls-like. There's a lot of gameplay elements to cover in Hell is Us. But let's start with the basics. You have no real-time GPS map. What you do have is quest-specific or area-specific items and badly drawn maps and lore and information, with which to piece together where might be good to explore next. You quickly get control of an APC which you can drive to dozens of large open areas that have towns, inn or tombs, and a lot of things to find. Hell is Us is all about them relics of Hadia's past, linked to the strange creatures in its present. You may not have a map, but you do have a Pip-Boy, and it's constantly recording everything everyone says, keeping track of items, relics, clues, codes, weapons, equipment, your drone, and plenty more besides. This is what you rely on, not the missing map. Let me give you an example of the quests and how they work without a quest marker. NPCs will say things like the clue is in the Abbey, but you don't have any information on where the Abbey is. Another will describe the Abbey as having a gold globe on its roof, or maybe you miss that and find the map a peacekeeper drew for himself, with a vague circle labeled Abbey, and you can then piece together where it is when you are back out in the swamp, by the other landmarks you can see. Once there, another NPC needs help, and so on. It's an organic lived-in world that felt more real, more quickly than most run-straight-through open worlds. These NPCs live here, and they reference all sorts of things, like a real person might. There's a system of doing good deeds, which is essentially finding items that you have a clue belong to an NPC, and then returning them or reporting back the conclusion or whereabouts of another NPC. You'll meet a couple of more involved NPCs along the way, one of which takes up residence in your APC and talks through the drone. They are an expert in relics and the history of Hadia, and give you masses of clues as to how to progress beyond the initial Find Your Family quest. They can unlock points of interest as you might get in an Assassin's Creed game, and where vaults of hidden knowledge might be weapon caches, which is pretty useful. It is the unfolding investigation into Hadia's past and how its protectors are involved, and how it affects the creepy monsters, that is the driving force behind the plot. The other thing apart from you roaming around these open areas are the haze, those whole-faced, jerky white creepazoids you've been seeing on the trailers since the first announcements. There's a handful of types, from the basic figures to larger ones with warped wings or huge arms. And out of the hole in their chests, they very often birth a second enemy. This one is a neon-colored geometric soul thing that acts like a second enemy, but also as a shield to the one that birthed it, meaning you can't kill the original haze until you deal with the geo-shape shield entity. They change shapes and fire off projectiles, and demand fast reflexes and generally look like they came out of Returnal. Cue the sort of pseudo-Souls-like combat. You have a handful of different weapon types, swords, polearms, dual axes, and your weird, creepy human drone, and you need to parry and attack these creatures. Parry is completely essential, but it's only one of two systems working at the same time. The other is a damage-based heal. As you do damage, it collects as a potential heal on your health bar, and you need to hit R1 at the right time after hits to bank it. Only trouble I found was that enemy counters and the heal trigger moment were almost always the same moment, forcing you to choose between parrying again and healing. Healing like this makes for a really fun and aggressive type of combat, but getting the timing and space needed to heal was a lot like other Souls-likes. And is it a Souls-like? Not really. There's some creepy dungeons, and a lot of parrying super strong enemies, and a stamina gauge maybe halfway to Souls-like. But there is no soul or equivalent currency, there is no death and constant rebirth, no bonfires or leveling in the Souls-like sense. When you die, you just start again at the last save point, and you lose nothing. Combat is complicated but also kind of intuitive. I found myself far more able to take this in with minimum instruction than to master the recent Wucheng combat, with dozens of tutorials and explanations. You also have your drone, which can distract one enemy in a pack or provide a projectile shield, and you have limbic moves, which are specials you can perform if you get the space, and you can hold 3 of them at once. The enemy's colors are tied to one of 4 limbic powers in the game, and can be countered, increasing your damage, by using the corresponding color of sword or weapon. I found it best to have literally 4 different weapons, albeit variations of a sword, for each enemy and boss situation. I also massively enjoyed the time loop system, where killing a certain number of particular enemies let you deal with narrative portions and uncover more clues and scenes, and then return to the right NPC and get even more rewards. Hell Is Us doesn't lack for inspiring and unique iconography and memorable designs. In a market where every game is looking the same, it's always nice to see a protagonist with a bit of a different look, here only really comparable to Metal Gear. The drone with its strange humanoid body, and the haze creatures with the hollows in their faces and bodies, their geometric subcreatures, all are things I've never seen before. That white-tipped sword. Even the symbols and magical icons and relics all have a great look to them, and a working internal symbology that became memorable, maybe just due to the amount you had to engage with them. Greg described the graphics as having a kind of grim prettiness, and he's right. Hell Is Us isn't going to change the world graphically, but it's been beautifully designed to show itself off in the best ways. And musically, Hell Is Us doesn't have just a few memorable tracks. It's filled with eerie, ambient, droning, and melodic glitches, all dissonant somehow, and yet that's the sound of Hadia. I remember areas and parts of the game vividly because of the creeptastic music that started as I was approaching. I will definitely be buying the soundtrack release and listening to it while I work. Hell Is Us is pretty much what you bring to it. If you want something grown-up, almost literary and demanding, this is it. You've got to listen to everything and pay attention. If you want mindless combat and a thrill ride, this won't be the place to find it. Rogue Factor have designed Hell Is Us to recapture that sense of satisfaction that we got decades ago, from uncovering everything a game had to offer on our own, rather than the modern open-world scenario of more markers than you can cope with, just clearing maps of icons. Hell Is Us succeeds in that objective, but you can break it in a moment. You could resort to a guide, you could cheat, but where in most games I don't think this causes much harm, in Hell Is Us, you'd only be robbing yourself of the experience. It's been crafted to work this way. Even though it starts off a little hard to penetrate, Hell Is Us succeeds in creating a compelling mystery. I soon grew obsessive about finding out the secrets of Hadia. Its atmosphere had me, and its style, letting me investigate this place with far less direction than usual, was welcome. It's soon compelling you onward, each new area promising to build on the last, each new mystery, like a jigsaw piece fitting into place. I never felt like I was going the wrong way, because every route led somewhere interesting. Open worlds of the modern era have grown stale, and I rarely seek out all the secrets and optional content. It so often feels like barefaced filler. Hell Is Us compelled me once again to seek these optional parts out by making them the reward for mysteries solved or through a sense of having earned them. In the end, I hope Hell Is Us Impact is as heady as its ambition, as an actual game changer that affects the way developers create games in the future. Hell Is Us is available 4th September on PlayStation 5, Review Platform, Xbox Series SX and PC via Steam. Developer, Rogue Factor Publisher, Nakin. Disclaimer: in order to complete this review, we were provided with a promotional copy of the game. For our full review policy, please go here. If you enjoyed this article or any more of our content, please consider our Patreon. Make sure to follow PS5 Nexus on our social channels: Twitter, Facebook, Twitch, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, to keep up to date on our news, reviews, and features. I just beat Hell Is Us on PS5 Pro. Here's 3 reasons to play, and 1 to skip. Hell Is Us could be one of 2025's biggest sleeper hits. When you purchase through links on our site, we may earn an affiliate commission. Here's how it works. A third-person semi-open world action game, with mostly optional, Souls-like elements, sounds like an extremely generic pitch on the surface. There are plenty of games that meet that brief released every year, but Hell Is Us might just be one of 2025's most interesting releases. And this new title from developer Rogue Factor could become a sleeper hit. Its fusion of an intriguing and mysterious sci-fi setting with player-driven exploration is compelling. And while its repetitive combat represents an unfortunate blemish on the overall experience, players looking for an absorbing adventure in a lore-rich setting will want to give it a chance. Just be prepared to pay close attention to your surroundings, because in the world of Hell Is Us, you'll often need to rely on your detective skills. After completing the game on PS5 Pro in around 20 hours, with plenty of side content left untouched, at least double that playtime if you're going for a 100% completionist run. Here are the 3 main reasons Hell Is Us is worth experiencing, alongside the 1 major drawback. Hell Is Us is a sci-fi action game that sees you explore Hedia, a county divided by civil war and blighted by a supernatural threat. To unravel the many mysteries of this sinister location, you'll need to pay close attention to the world around you, as there are no map markers to follow. Developed by Rogue Factor, it also packs melee-based combat against eerie foes packing ghostly powers. Hell Is Us casts you as protagonist Remy, a United Nations peacekeeper who sneaks into the lockdown country of Hadia. It's quite the powder keg following a bloody civil war and the emergence of a supernatural threat known as Hollow Walkers. Oh, and the stakes are extra personal as Remy was born in the country, but smuggled out as a young child. Remy may be the star on the box art, but Hadia itself feels like the real main character. Fans of optional lore pickups and exhausting every option in dialogue trees for additional information will be in heaven. There's a lot to learn about Hadia, and slowly unraveling its dark history is one of the game's biggest draws. A lot is bubbling under the surface. The sense of atmosphere, conveyed by the somber world design and the deliciously eerie score, is highly effective. The developers claim the 2018 movie, Annihilation, served as a major inspiration, and it really shows. There's also a dash of Blade Runner about Hell Is Us, most apparent in its core narrative setup that sees Remy interviewed in a smoky room. From the drop, you always feel on edge as you take your first steps in Hadia's lush wooded area, serving as the introductory stage. As you venture deeper into the setting, exploring towns, underground temples, and scientific facilities, the sense of intrigue only deepens. Even as someone with a bad habit of skipping collectible pickups, I felt encouraged to read every note, journal, and computer log I could find to further unspool what happened here. Get instant access to breaking news, the hottest reviews, great deals, and helpful tips. An early splash screen informs you that Hell Is Us shuns some of the player-friendly conveniences that have become commonplace in modern gaming. Namely, there's no in-game map, luminescent trails on the ground, or flashing waypoints in the sky instructing you where to go next. Instead, Hell Is Us wants you to engage your noggin and figure stuff out for yourself. Now, it would be false to suggest that you get no assistance whatsoever. You are given a useful compass. Many notes suggest you travel in a specific direction, And the objectives section in your always available tablet-style device helps track what you've learned from exploring and gives you a quick way to recall what NPCs have told you. But you can't just mindlessly follow a glowing marker to your next objective. You need to pay close attention and rely on environmental cues. Still, Hell Is Us offers pretty robust guidance towards main story beats. Like an NPC telling you to check out a nearby church isn't exactly subtle guidance. But to complete optional objectives and find the biggest secrets, you're given very little to go off, and instead need to explore thoroughly and sometimes use your own intuition to fill in the blanks. You can even automatically fail side objectives if you progress too far in the main story before seeing them through to the end. My favorite aspect of Hell Is Us is its approach to the many puzzles you'll encounter along your journey to unearth Hadia's secrets and stop an event known as the Calamity from occurring. Some puzzles are as simple as finding items in the environment, like the correct key for a locked door or a wooden gear to restore an elevator. However, the most involved and most satisfying require you to piece together information from numerous sources, ranging from scrawled writing on walls to computer terminals with clues buried in email logs. You might be tempted to look up an online guide when you get stuck, but I implore you to meet the game on its own terms and put your brain power to the test. The lightbulb moments when things click are the most enjoyable part of Hell Is Us. It's also the game's credit that almost all the puzzles feel logical, and once you have the solution, you'll feel like it was always staring you in the face. Unfortunately, there was one puzzle that involved cracking a hidden safe code in the office of a government official obsessed with a historical figure, which felt illogical. Even when I got the correct solution, it seemed cheap and designed to stump you rather than test your critical thinking. For all the praise I've heaped on Hell Is Us above, the major area where it stumbles is pretty significant: combat. You're going to find yourself square off against hordes of Hollow Walkers very often, and these battles become mundane very quickly. It's in combat that the Souls-like element of Hell Is Us comes into play. Melee-based skirmishes revolve around careful stamina management, timing your parries to deflect blows, and making use of an extremely finicky mechanic that lets you recover a portion of health after striking an enemy. The more damage you dish out without getting hit, the more health you recover. If you want to ramp up the challenge further, you can also toggle an optional death penalty mode that sees you lose all your collected XP upon death, and all defeated enemies respawn as well. A further complexity comes in the form of enemies linked to the haze, described as expressions of emotions. These are basically color-coded floating beings that burst from regular enemies and must be defeated first before you can deal any damage to the host. It's a novel conception, but it results in overly long fights that are more tedious than engaging. You're given all the expected ways to vanquish your enemies, from a range of upgradable melee weapons, special abilities, such as one that lets you fire a ranged projectile, and even a companion drone that can perform various powerful combat moves. Ultimately, the upgrades are all functional, but I never felt a genuine thrill when picking up a new one. There's a lack of enemy variety in the game, and the few boss encounters presented on the Golden Path are extremely drawn-out and simplistic. Combat serves more as a blocker to all the stuff that Hell Is Us does well, and never managed to engage me in the same way the exploration did. If you're looking for an action game that won't just have you following markers around a map covered in an overwhelming number of icons, then Hell Is Us could be the refreshing approach to semi-open-world design you've been seeking. Players who love diving into intriguing lore and wandering a world hiding plenty off the beaten path will have a blast. However, if you're primarily looking for a game that will get your heart racing thanks to challenging and/or mechanically interesting combat scenarios, then you might not be so taken with Hell Is Us. The combat checks the necessary boxes it needs to, but rarely, if ever, did I come away from a set-piece showdown with its supernatural foes feeling satisfied. Nevertheless, looking back at my playthrough of Hell Is Us, it's the highs of discovering a hidden secret or piecing together various clues to solve a complex puzzle that stayed with me most. I just wish that I didn't have to slog through so much repetitive combat to enjoy those highs. Rory is a senior entertainment editor at Tom's Guide based in the UK. He covers a wide range of topics, but with a particular focus on gaming and streaming. When he's not reviewing the latest games, searching for hidden gems on Netflix, or writing hot takes on new gaming hardware, TV shows, and movies, he can be found attending music festivals and getting far too emotionally invested in his favorite football team. You must confirm your public display name before commenting. Please log out and then log in again. You will then be prompted to enter your display name. And that's a wrap on today's essential updates. We dove into the mysterious world of Hell Is Us, exploring its unique approach to gameplay and narrative. From its deep lore to its challenging combat, it's a title that's definitely making waves. If you're looking for an adventure that rewards your instincts and attention to detail, this one's for you. Hit that like button if you found this info helpful, subscribe for more gaming news and analysis, and ring that bell so you're always in the loop. Let us know in the comments what you think of Hell Is Us. And for all things gaming, make sure to follow us on all our social channels.